Ambassador Honwul walked into the giant council chamber with heavy steps. His black uniform was clean and pressed, but his face looked tired, very tired. He had been coming to this same room for 20 years, and every single time felt harder than the last. The huge circular room was filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Tall ones, short ones, some with fur, some with scales, and some that looked like walking trees. Honwul took his seat at the human section, which was much smaller than the others. Around him sat hundreds of alien beings who all seemed to be staring at him with unfriendly eyes. The Vorthok delegate was the worst of them all, a giant creature with 4 arms and skin that looked like broken glass. He always spoke the loudest and always had the most cruel things to say about humans. Today was going to be another bad day. Honwul could feel it in his bones, the way the aliens whispered to each other when he walked by, the way they looked at him like he was some kind of dangerous animal that needed to be kept in a cage. For 300 years, humans had been trying to prove they belonged here. They followed every rule, no matter how stupid. They obeyed every order, no matter how unfair. They smiled and said thank you even when the aliens treated them like dirt. The Vorthok delegate stood up and pointed one of his sharp claws at Honwul. His voice was like the sound of glass breaking when he spoke. The humans must give up their rights to the Kepler system colonies, the creature said. They are expanding too fast, and this threatens the natural order of things. Honwul felt his heart sink. The Kepler colonies were home to 50 million humans. They had spent 40 years turning dead rocks into beautiful worlds with blue skies and green forests. The colonists had families there. They had built schools and hospitals and parks. Their children had been born there. It was home all around the chamber. The other aliens nodded their heads in agreement. The fish-like aquarii moved their fins up and down. The plant creatures rustled their leaves. The robot-like syntoids made clicking sounds that meant they agreed. Everyone seemed happy to see humans lose another piece of their space. This was not the first time the aliens had made humans give up colonies. Before, they said humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too willing to fight. They said humans asked too many questions and wanted to explore too much. They said humans made other species nervous because they changed things too quickly. Honwul stood up slowly. He looked around at all the alien faces staring at him. Some looked angry, some looked bored, but none looked friendly. He had given speeches in this room before, passionate speeches about human rights and fairness and justice, but no one ever listened. They had already made up their minds about humans long ago. We built those colonies with our own hands, Honwul said quietly. We took dead worlds and made them alive. We grew food and built cities. We never hurt anyone. We never took anything that belonged to someone else. The Vorthok laughed and the sound made Honwul's skin crawl. You think we are afraid of your little settlements? The creature said. We are afraid of what you represent: chaos, change, disorder. Your species does not understand that some things should never change. You refuse to accept that the galaxy has an order and you are not at the top of it. Similar conversations were happening all across human space at that very moment. Admiral Sojin was sitting in her office on Earth, reading reports from every human colony and outpost. The news was always the same. The aliens wanted more restrictions, more taxes, more control. They wanted humans to give up their fastest ships, their best weapons, their newest inventions. They said it was for peace, but Sojin knew it was really about fear. Captain Tejo was having his own problems at the edge of the galaxy. His ship had just found a beautiful new world with 3 moons and purple oceans before his crew could even land. Alien patrol ships surrounded them. The lead ship ordered them to leave immediately. The sector belonged to the Ethereal Collective, even though no one had lived there for millions of years. Darthajin was working late in her research station when the message came. Her team had just discovered a new way to make energy that was clean and safe. It could power entire civilizations without creating any pollution or waste. She was excited to share the discovery with the galaxy. But the Galactic Science Council called it too dangerous for primitive species like humans. They ordered her to destroy all her research immediately. Every human felt the weight pressing down on them. They were treated like children who could not be trusted with important things. They were treated like pets who needed to be controlled. They were treated like a disease that might spread if not contained. The older alien races talked about wisdom and stability, but humans could see the truth. They were scared and jealous. The worst part was that humans had been good galactic citizens. They had shared their discoveries. They had helped other species with their problems. They had fought alongside aliens against common enemies. They had tried so hard to fit in, to belong, to be accepted, but it was never enough. Honwul looked around the council chamber one more time. He saw the same faces that had rejected human proposals for decades, the same creatures who found excuses to limit human expansion, the same beings who smiled politely while making rules that only hurt humans. Something inside him finally broke. It was not anger exactly. It was more like a deep sadness mixed with resignation. He had spent his whole life trying to make these creatures accept his species, but they never would. Humans would always be the outsiders, the dangerous ones, the species that needed to be controlled. Honwul sat back down and said nothing more. He did not argue or make speeches. He just listened as the aliens decided to take away another piece of human space. He took notes like a good diplomat. He nodded when they spoke to him. He even said thank you when the session ended, but Inside his mind, Hanwoo was already planning something different, something that would change everything. He thought about Admiral Sojin back on Earth. He thought about Captain Taeho exploring the galaxy. He thought about Dr. The Jin and her amazing discoveries. He thought about 50 million humans living on the Kepler colonies. They were all good people. They were all smart and creative and hardworking. They deserved better than this. They deserved to live free without alien masters telling them what they could and could not do. As Hanwoo walked out of the council chamber, he made a decision. He would send a message to Earth tonight, a coded message that would start something new, something that would show the galaxy what humans were really capable of when they stopped trying to please everyone else. The aliens thought they had won another victory over the troublesome humans, but they had no idea what was coming. They had pushed humanity too far for too long. Now they were about to learn what happened when humans stopped playing by alien rulers. Hanwoo smiled for the first time in months as he walked toward his ship. It was time to go home. 3 weeks after Hanwoo returned to Earth, everything started to change, but the change was so quiet that most aliens did not notice it at first. Human representatives in council meetings stopped arguing. They stopped making passionate speeches about fairness and justice. Instead, they just sat quietly, listened to what the aliens said, took notes, and voted exactly as expected. Ambassador Hanwoo had become a different person entirely when the Vorthok delegate demanded that humans surrender more territory. Hanwoo simply nodded and said, "Yes, sir." When the Equerry wanted higher taxes on human trade routes, Hanwoo agreed without question. When the Synthoids proposed new restrictions on human technology, Hanwoo signed the papers with a polite smile. The aliens were pleased. They thought they had finally broken human stubbornness. They believed humans had learned their proper place in the galaxy. Some of the older alien leaders congratulated themselves on their wisdom in handling the human problem, but far away from the council chambers, something extraordinary was happening. Admiral Sojin sat in her secure office deep beneath the Earth. She was sending coded messages to every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. The messages were short and simple, but they contained orders that would change everything. The code name was Project Homecoming, and it meant exactly what it sounded like. Every human in the galaxy was coming home. Captain Taeho received his orders while his ship was exploring a nebula near the Andromeda approach. He had been mapping new star systems for the Galactic Navigation Authority, like he did every month. But when the coded message appeared on his personal communicator, everything changed. Called his crew together in the main meeting room. His officers looked confused when he told them to stop all exploration work and begin packing immediately. They had spent months cataloging the nebula and were not scheduled to return home for another year. Orders from Earth. Taeho said simply, "We are going home and we are taking everything with us." His crew worked with quiet determination over the next few days. They packed every piece of equipment, every scientific instrument, every personal belonging. Everything that could be moved was loaded onto their ship. The advanced sensors that could detect planets from light years away, the quantum computers that could calculate hyperspace jumps in seconds, the fusion generators that powered their long-range missions. When they were finished, nothing remained but an empty station floating in space. Taeho did not file his usual reports with the galactic authorities. He simply set course for Earth and disappeared into hyperspace. The Jin was having a similar experience at her research station. She had received the same coded message from Admiral Sojin: "Pack everything, leave nothing behind. Come home immediately." Her research team worked through the night, dismantling their laboratories. They took every piece of equipment, every computer, every sample of their revolutionary energy research. The aliens had called it too dangerous for humans to possess, but now it was going back to human space where it belonged. The alien observers who were supposed to watch human research activities arrived the next morning to find empty rooms and cheerful goodbye notes. Dr. The Jin had left a polite message thanking them for their oversight and wishing them well in their future endeavors. In colony worlds across the galaxy, human settlers began the greatest moving operation in history. 50 million people on the Kepler colonies started packing their entire civilization. The work took months, but humans had always been good at big projects. They did not just abandon their cities like refugees running from disaster. Instead, they carefully dismantled everything they had built. The fusion power plants that provided clean energy, the atmospheric processes that had turned dead air into something breathable, the gravity generators that made high-gravity worlds comfortable for human life. Massive transport ships arrived at every human colony, heavy industrial vessels that could carry entire factories, giant passenger ships that could hold millions of people, specialized cargo haulers designed to transport delicate scientific equipment. Everything humans had built over 3 centuries was being carefully packed up and moved. The terraforming equipment that had turned barren rocks into garden worlds, the weather-controlled systems that prevented storms and droughts, the agricultural machines that could grow food in any soil. All of it was loaded onto ships and sent toward Earth. Even the smallest details were not forgotten. Human settlers dug up their flower gardens and loaded the plants into ship-based greenhouses. They disassembled their playgrounds and schools and hospitals. They took their art and their music and their books. Nothing that humans had created was left behind. The aliens, who had demanded human withdrawal from various sectors, got exactly what they wanted, but they had expected humans to just walk away and leave everything behind. Instead, humans took their entire civilization with them. Alien traders who had grown rich selling goods to human colonies suddenly found their customers disappearing. Human merchants stopped attending galactic trade conferences. Human tourists no longer visited alien worlds. The economic impact spread through hundreds of star systems like ripples in a pondsum. Alien observers tried to follow the human ships to see where they were going, but human vessels had always been faster and more maneuverable than anyone else. Human captains knew secret routes through dangerous asteroid fields and unstable wormholes that other species were afraid to use. Within 6 months, the galaxy had lost track of most human ships. They seemed to vanish into deep space, heading toward areas that were not on any galactic charts. Some reports suggested humans were building new settlements in the void between star systems, but these seemed impossible to believe. The Galactic Council initially celebrated the news that troublesome humans were finally learning their place. They were withdrawing from areas where they were not wanted. They were becoming quiet and obedient like proper junior members of galactic civilization. But as more reports came in from across the galaxy, celebration turned to confusion. Then to worry. Humanity was not just withdrawing from disputed territories. They were not just giving up their newest colonies. They were leaving everywhere. Every human embassy closed, every human trade office shut down, every human research station went dark. One by one, human representatives stopped showing up to meetings. Human voices fell silent in council chambers. Human ships disappeared from shipping lanes. The Vorthok delegate, who had spent decades demanding human withdrawal, now stared at the empty human section of the council chamber. His crystalline skin seemed duller than usual. His aide brought him reports of human movements, but they made no sense. Where are they all going? The Vorthok asked. What are they planning? His aide could only shake his head. Our intelligence services cannot track them, sir. Human ships are avoiding all known hyperspace routes. They seem to be using paths through space that we did not know existed across the galaxy. Alien leaders were asking the same questions. For the first time in 300 years, there were no humans to blame for problems, no human explorers finding new territories, no human traders disrupting established markets, no human scientists making discoveries that changed everything. The silence was deafening, and somehow it was more frightening than all the human noise had ever been. 6 months had passed since humans began their great withdrawal, and the Galactic Council was meeting for its quarterly session. The huge chamber looked wrong somehow, and it took the alien delegates a few minutes to realize why the human section was completely empty. For the first time in 300 years. There was no Ambassador Hanwell, no human observers, no interpreters or staff members. The Vorthok representative, who had spent so many years demanding human withdrawal, now stared at those empty chairs with growing worry. His forearms twitched nervously as he spoke to his aide, a smaller creature with the same crystalline skin. Where are they? He asked. For the 100th time, our spy networks cannot find them anywhere. Our military scouts report massive ship movements toward the Sol system, but the humans are not responding to any communication attempts. His aide shuffled through data tablets with shaking claws. Sir, the reports are getting stranger every day. Human colonies that took decades to build have been completely emptied in just a few months. They took everything with them, even the street lights and park benches. Nothing was left behind across the galaxy. The absence of humans was creating problems that no one had expected. The HFY had built their underwater cities on gas giant moons using human atmospheric engineering techniques without human experts to maintain the delicate life support systems. Several colonies were facing environmental collapse, and Reefsinger of the HFY delegation was desperately trying to find replacement technicians, but no other species understood the complex systems that humans had designed. The atmospheric processes were failing one by one, and millions of HFY lives were at risk. We need human engineers, Reefsinger pleaded with the council. Our people are dying without their expertise. We never realized how dependent we had become on their technical knowledge. The Florian agricultural worlds were facing an even worse crisis. Their entire food production system had been designed around human pollination techniques that allowed crops to grow in alien soil. Human agricultural specialists had developed special methods that increased crop yields by 3 times the normal rate without human farmers to maintain these systems. The Florian colonies were watching their harvests fail. Their leaders stood before the council with withered leaves and desperate voices begging for help that no one could provide. Even the mechanical synthoids were struggling in ways that shocked everyone. Human computer programmers had developed problem-solving algorithms that the synthoids had integrated into their core operating systems. These programs helped the artificial beings think more creatively and adapt to new situations without human technical support. Critical systems throughout the synthoid network were beginning to malfunction. Their logical processes were becoming rigid and inflexible. They were losing the ability to innovate or respond to unexpected problems. The galactic economy, which had seemed so stable for thousands of years, was showing serious cracks. Human colonies had been major consumers of alien goods and services. They had bought Vorthok crystal technology, HFY biotechnology, Florian agricultural products, and synthoid computational services. Human traders had operated the most efficient shipping networks between distant sectors of the galaxy. They knew the fastest routes through hyperspace and had developed cargo handling techniques that no other species could match. Without human shipping companies, goods were piling up at spaceports across the galaxy. Human explorers had been responsible for discovering most of the galaxy's useful resources over the past 3 centuries. Their willingness to venture into dangerous regions and unknown territories had opened up entire sectors for development. Now exploration had almost completely stopped. Sessions of the Galactic Trade Commission produced only more questions and fewer answers. Committee members argued about how to replace human services, but no one had realistic solutions. The other species had specialized in their own areas of expertise for so long that they could not quickly learn human techniques. Some alien leaders suggested sending military fleets to human space to demand explanations and force them to return. But their military advisors reminded them of uncomfortable truths. Human ships had always been faster and more maneuverable than anyone else's. Human weapons technology was generations ahead of most other species. Human soldiers were famous for their refusal to surrender even in hopeless situations. General Voidclaw of the ethereal collective military forces presented a classified report to the council leadership. Our intelligence suggests that humans have been quietly studying and mastering every other species' technologies for centuries. While we thought they were junior partners learning from us, they were actually reverse engineering everything we taught them. The implications were terrifying. Humans had learned to query biotechnology techniques and then improved on them. They had studied Florian agricultural methods and developed better versions. They had analyzed synthoid computing systems and created more advanced alternatives. Dr. Kefar, a respected ethereal philosopher, published an essay that became required reading throughout the galaxy. In it, he argued that humanity's withdrawal represented the most significant change in galactic politics in recorded history. We assumed they needed us more than we needed them. Kefar wrote, we believed their participation in our civilization was a privilege we granted them. We thought we were the teachers and they were the students. But what if we were wrong about everything? The essay went on to describe how humans had always been different from other galactic species. They asked questions that others considered settled. They challenged assumptions that had been accepted for millions of years. They looked for new ways to solve old problems. Perhaps Kethvar concluded we were not civilizing them. Perhaps they were studying us, learning our weaknesses, preparing for this moment when they would no longer need our approval or our permission. Long-range sensors began detecting strange energy readings from the Sol system, but the signals were unlike anything in galactic databases. Whatever humans were building in their home system was beyond current understanding of physics and engineering. The empty chairs in the council chamber seemed to grow more ominous with each passing day. They represented not just absent delegates but a growing realization that the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. The Vorthok representative stared at those chairs during every session now. His crystalline skin had lost its shine and his forearms hung limply at his sides. He had gotten exactly what he had demanded for decades. The humans were gone. They had withdrawn from galactic civilization. They were no longer disrupting the natural order, but somehow their absence was more disturbing than their presence had ever been. The silence from human space was deafening, and it carried implications that kept him awake at night. What were the humans planning in their isolation? And more importantly, what would happen when they were ready to reveal their intentions to the galaxy? 1 year after humanity's great withdrawal, the galaxy's most powerful sensors detected something that sent shockwaves through every alien government. From the edge of explored space to the galactic core, the news spread like wildfire. The humans were building something massive in their home system, something beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their images were blurry and incomplete because human space was now heavily shielded by some kind of energy field that interfered with long-range scanning, but what the sensors could detect was enough to cause panic in alien capitals across the galaxy. Admiral Zeth Prime of the Vorthok military was the first to understand what the readings meant. He stood before a holographic display showing the Sol system and pointed with one of his 4 clawed hands at the incredible structures appearing around Earth. They are not building defenses, he told the emergency council session. They are not preparing for war. They are building something. We have never imagined something that changes everything we thought we knew about galactic engineering. The images showed artificial rings surrounding every planet in the human home system, massive structures that dwarfed even the largest alien space stations. These rings were connected by enormous cables and energy conduits that pulsed with unknown forms of power. The entire solar system appeared to be transforming into a single integrated megastructure. A beat that was not the most disturbing. Discovery human ships had been spotted in the deep void between star systems, far from any alien patrol routes. They were not exploring or trading like human ships had done for centuries. Instead, they were building installations in the darkness of empty space. These waystation networks appeared to be connecting distant regions of the galaxy through routes that bypassed all known hyperspace lanes. Human engineering teams were creating their own private highway system through space using technology that alien scientists could not begin to understand. Quintal, the galaxy's leading theoretical physicist, was called before a closed session of the Galactic Science Council. His report was classified at the highest levels, but rumors of its contents spread through the scientific community like a plague. Based on our analysis of energy signatures and structural readings, Quintal reported, we believe the humans are constructing a completely independent technological infrastructure. They are not just withdrawing from our society, they are creating their own civilization from scratch. The implications were staggering. For millions of years, galactic civilization had been built on the principle of interdependence. Each species contributed their unique abilities and resources to the common good. The system worked because no single species could survive alone in the vastness of space. The Aquarium provided biotechnology that allowed life to flourish in hostile environments. The Florians managed agricultural systems that fed billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. The Synthoids handled data processing and computational tasks that organic minds found impossible. The Vorthok applied crystal technology that enabled faster-than-light communication. Dozens of other species filled specialized roles in the great web of galactic civilization. Each depended on the others for essential services and resources. The system had been stable for so long that most beings could not imagine any other way of organizing society. Of humanity had been considered useful but not essential. They were good at warfare and exploration and solving complex problems, but surely the galaxy could function without them. Other species we could learn to do what humans did, given enough time. Now it became clear that this assumption had been catastrophically wrong. While sitting at the galactic table for 3 centuries, human scientists had been quietly studying every other species, technologies and capabilities. They had learned Aquari biotechnology techniques and improved on them. They had mastered Florian agricultural methods and developed superior alternatives. They had analyzed Synthoid computing systems and created more advanced versions. Human researchers had not just learned these technologies, they had integrated them with their own innovations to create something entirely new. The energy readings from human space suggested power generation systems that were orders of magnitude more efficient than anything else in the galaxy. The construction techniques humans were using to build their megastructures were based on principles that alien engineers had never considered. Human ships were moving through space using propulsion methods that made conventional hyperspace travel look primitive. Most terrifying of all was the realization that humanity had never really needed the rest of the galaxy. They had participated in galactic civilization by choice, not necessity. They had followed alien rules and accepted alien limitations because they chose to do so, not because they had to. All those centuries of treating humans as junior partners, as students, learning from their betters, as a dangerous species that needed to be controlled, had been based on a fundamental misunderstanding. Humans had been the most advanced species in the galaxy all along. They had simply been polite enough not to mention that the evidence was overwhelming. Human technology had always been slightly better than everyone else's. Human ships were faster, human weapons were more effective. Human explorers found resources that others missed. Human scientists made discoveries that revolutionized entire fields of study. The galaxy had assumed this was because humans were naturally aggressive and willing to take risks that more civilized species avoided. But the truth was much simpler. Human technology was better because humans were better at building it. Reports began filtering in from the edges of known space. Human colonies were appearing in star systems that had been considered uninhabitable. Worlds with crushing gravity or toxic atmospheres or deadly radiation were being transformed into garden paradises, using techniques that alien terraforming experts said were impossible. These new human worlds did not appear on any galactic charts and were not registered with any galactic authority. They existed in a parallel civilization that operated according to its own rules and recognized no external authority. The old galactic order was beginning to understand that their greatest fear was becoming reality. Humanity was not trying to conquer or control the existing galaxy. They were replacing it entirely with something better, more dynamic and more free. Long-range communication arrays detected signals passing between human installations. Using transmission methods that were completely undetectable by conventional means, human ships appeared and disappeared from sensors as if they were using some form of stealth technology that made them invisible to alien detection systems. The galaxy was watching humanity build a new kind of civilization, one that made the old ways look primitive and outdated. The empty chairs in the council chamber were no longer just a symbol of human absence. They were a reminder that the future was being built elsewhere, by the species that the galaxy had tried so hard to keep in their place. And the most terrifying realization of all was that there was nothing the old galactic order could do to stop it. 2 years after humanity abandoned the galactic table, the first official communication arrived from human space. It was not addressed to the Galactic Council or any specific government. Instead, it was broadcast simultaneously to every inhabited world in the galaxy using transmission technology that bypassed all existing communication networks. The message appeared on screens in alien capitals, government buildings, military installations, and even private homes across hundreds of star systems. No one could block it or turn it off. The signal was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once, using methods that alien communication experts said were theoretically impossible. The speaker was a young human woman named Dayun, who appeared to be broadcasting from a command center of incredible sophistication. Behind her holographic displays showed images that left alien viewers speechless. Thriving human colonies on worlds that defied every known law of physics, cities floating in the clouds of gas giants, underwater settlements in the depths of water worlds, gardens growing in the vacuum of space itself. To our former colleagues in the galactic community, Dayun began speaking in perfect galactic standard but with a calm confidence. that had never been heard from human representatives before. "We want you to know that we hold no anger or resentment for the treatment we received. We understand that you feared us, and perhaps you were right to do so." She gestured to the displays behind her, which showed human colonies on worlds that had never appeared on any galactic chart. Entire star systems had been transformed into centers of production and research that made the greatest alien achievements look like primitive cave painting. Ships of revolutionary design moved between these worlds, carrying goods and people at speeds that seemed to violate the basic laws of physics. The vessels appeared and disappeared like ghosts, sliding through dimensions that other species could not even detect. "We have spent the past 2 years building something new." Dayun continued, "A network of worlds and technologies that operates completely independently of galactic infrastructure. We are entirely self-sufficient now. We do not need your trade routes, your resources, or your permission to exist." The images showed manufacturing centers that could produce anything imaginable, energy systems that drew power from the fabric of space itself, transportation networks that connected distant galaxies in minutes rather than months, research facilities where human scientists were unlocking secrets of the universe that had puzzled alien minds for millions of years. But perhaps most shocking were the agricultural worlds where humans were growing crops that could feed entire civilizations, the same species that aliens had dismissed as too primitive to handle advanced biotechnology. "We're now producing food in quantities that could end hunger across the galaxy. We are not your enemies," Dayun said, and her words carried across space to reach every alien ear. "But we are no longer your dependents, your servants, or your problem to manage. We have chosen our own path among the stars, and we are building the future according to our own vision." The broadcast showed human children playing in parks on airless moons, human families living in comfort on worlds with gravity so strong that other species would be crushed flat, human scientists conducting experiments that were rewriting the fundamental laws of physics. What was most disturbing to alien viewers was how happy the humans looked. They were not living in exile or struggling to survive in isolation. They were thriving in ways that made their former lives under alien oversight seem like imprisonment. "Any species that wishes to join us in this new endeavor is welcome," Dayun announced. "We judge beings by their actions and potential, not by their origins or biology. We will be here building the future for anyone ready to move beyond the old ways of thinking." The message concluded with coordinates for contact points scattered throughout the galaxy, places where alien beings could request passage to human space if they wanted to see this new civilization for themselves. In the days and weeks that followed the broadcast, alien governments tried desperately to maintain control, but the damage was already done. Entire populations of younger aliens began asking uncomfortable questions about why their societies were so rigid and limiting, why they had to follow rules that seemed designed to prevent progress rather than encourage it. Scientists who had spent their careers struggling against bureaucratic restrictions suddenly realized there was an alternative. Explorers who had been forbidden from investigating dangerous regions of space saw an opportunity for real discovery. Innovators whose ideas had been rejected as too radical or destabilizing learned that somewhere else their talents would be welcomed. The Great Migration began slowly. At first, young aliens would disappear from their home worlds, leaving behind notes about seeking new opportunities. Entire research teams would vanish overnight, along with their equipment and data. Alien entrepreneurs would close their businesses and liquidate their assets before disappearing into human space. The old galactic order tried to stop the exodus but found their efforts useless. Human ships appeared without warning at alien worlds, offering passage to anyone who wanted to leave. The vessels used stealth technology that made them invisible to alien sensors until they chose to reveal themselves. No military force could intercept them, no communication jamming could block their signals, no border controls could detect their movements. They came and went, like ghosts, offering hope to anyone tired of living under the old system. Reports began reaching alien governments about what happened to those who emigrated to human space. The stories were almost too incredible to believe. Former alien citizens were living in luxury on worlds that had been transformed into paradises. They were working on projects that pushed the boundaries of knowledge and achievement. They were free to pursue their dreams without restriction. Most disturbing of all, these emigrant aliens were not being used as slaves or servants in human society. They were being treated as equals, partners in the great work of building a new kind of civilization. Their unique abilities were valued and their contributions were welcomed. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions to discuss the crisis but found themselves unable to agree on any course of action. Some members wanted to declare war on humanity, but their military advisors explained that human ships were now so advanced that any conflict would be hopeless. Others proposed economic sanctions but realized that humanity no longer needed anything the old galaxy could provide. They had become completely self-sufficient in just 2 years, accomplishing what should have taken centuries. A few alien leaders suggested negotiation, but humanity had made their position clear. They were not interested in returning to the old system. They had moved beyond it entirely. Ambassador Hanwell, who had once sat quietly in council chambers, accepting alien demands, now served as humanity's first minister of interspecies relations. His final message to his former colleagues was brief and devastating. "You spent centuries teaching us that we did not belong at your table," he said. Thank you for that lesson. We have built our own table now, and everyone is welcome to join us. The age of human subordination is over. The age of human leadership that has begun, and the galaxy will never be the same. The old galactic order watched in horror as their civilizations slowly emptied. The future belonged to humanity now, and there was nothing they could do to change it.